Hello and welcome to M&M Mindset and Muscle. This is episode number 5, and today we are going to go over a full abs, calves, and hamstrings workout. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to answer some of your questions. I ran a Q&A on my Instagram, so I picked 3 of the top questions that I want to answer a little bit more in depth here in this video. So you can also check out my Instagram at Noah the Fox. I will be answering all the questions that you post up there in my story, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with these 3 questions. So stay tuned for the end if you asked a question or if you want to see an answer to those. And as always, if you have a question, you can leave it down in the comment section below and I will get to it there as well. So let's start off by jumping in to that hamstring workout. So we started the workout off with abs as usual. If I have abs or calves with the workout, I will start with that because by the time I'm done crushing the major muscle group of the training session, I'm too tired to put any good focus in there. So we start off the abdominals with a rope cable crunch. You'll notice the form here, I'm really focusing on the flexion and extension of the spine. I see a lot of people performing this exercise incorrectly where they use more of the hip flexors and they kind of just bow down to the ground and allow the weight to pull them back up. Really focus on crunching and rolling your body in. I like to think of a pill bug or a potato bug if you're familiar with that. Those little bugs with the hard shells that can roll themselves into a circle. Try and roll up like a pill bug at the bottom. Exhale, crunch down on those abdominals, and then allow yourself to come into spinal extension where you're actually getting an arch in the back as you pull up. This will take you through a full range of motion and target the abdominals rather than targeting the hip flexors or just using gravity to swing the weight down to the ground. After this, we stood up and we moved directly into the standing twists. This is our oblique movement. Again, I don't like to use weight with any sort of oblique movement as I'm not looking to build out or thicken my waist. I just want to keep everything tight, keep good control of my obliques so that when I'm posing, I'm able to optimally engage them. Then we moved on to a seated leg raise as the captain's chair leg raise machine was taken, focusing again on keeping the tension on the abdominals and off of the hip flexors as much as possible. And we did 20 repetitions of each of these exercises. By the time I was done with the 3 rounds, my abs were cramping. It was great. Then we moved on to calves next. We started off with a seated calf raise. This is the warm-up set, just so you can get a feel for the form. Everything is very slow and controlled on the negative. Then pushing down as hard as I can up on tiptoes, almost like I'm trying to come up on the very tip of my big toe at the top to get that full contraction. And then controlling the eccentric nice and slow down into a full stretch. So we did 1 warm-up set here before moving into our working set. Our single working set was a rest pause. So it was actually 3 mini sets back to back, where we aimed for a total of 30 to 35 repetitions. So we got 12 on the first set, rested for about 10 breaths. Then we moved on to the second set. We got 10, rested for about 10 breaths, and then we finished off with 8. So my calves recover rather quickly, so I can get the higher repetition ranges on the second rest pause. Usually you're only able to get about half as many reps as you did on the first set on the second and half again on the third, but we were able to make that work. Again, notice the full contraction at the top, brief pause, controlling the eccentric, full stretch, brief pause, and then driving back up. This will keep the Achilles tendon from being able to take over and just bouncing and using momentum. My calves used to be a major weakness, and they still need bringing up, but they have come a long way since I learned to perform the calf exercises correctly rather than focusing on just pumping out as many repetitions as possible. From there, we moved on to a seated leg press. I love this exercise for calves, as rather than focusing on pushing myself backwards, you're really focusing on pushing your toes forward to bring that foot pad forward at the contraction. You can get a great range of motion. I feel a great stretch here. We did a 5-count stretch on each repetition. Now that's not a 5-second stretch. So for those of you who are counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then complaining that I stop at 3, 5 count means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, press. So we did 15 repetitions, 3 sets here. Every single rep had that 5-second pause at the eccentric. We were doing that loaded stretch. And so each set took 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to complete. And that makes it absolutely brutal, but amazing for calf growth and kills any sort of momentum in the exercise. After this, we didn't film that part because it would be boring, but I did a weighted under load calf stretch on the machine. We did 1 minute hold on each foot individually in the stretched position under weight. I did 2 sets there, so a total of 2 minutes on each foot, and then we moved on to both feet together, and I did 2-minute hold with both feet at the same time with a heavier load. So really focusing on stretching out those calves and forcing growth. Then we started off with hamstrings. We did a seated hamstring curl to start. We did a couple warm-up sets just to get the movement firing, and then we did 3 working sets. We did 1 heavy set of 12 to 15 and then 2 lighter, higher repetition sets. Again, I say lighter in quotation marks as we are still going close to or to failure of 15 to 20 repetitions. Every single rep was focusing on getting a deep squeeze in the hamstrings and then nice and controlled on the eccentric portion. Just like with the calf raises, you never want to flail and use momentum or allow gravity to yank you back into the starting position at any time. Always under control, like you're trying to make those hamstrings cramp up. We moved from there into single-legged hamstring curls. You can do this on a kneeling machine, or I'm doing them lying here, as the gym I was training at the time did not have a kneeling single-leg curl machine. We did 3 sets here, pyramiding up in weight with each set. Again, focusing on getting a full range of motion for as many of the repetitions as we could. On the last set, once I got to the point of failure at the 15 repetitions, I did a couple partials. And the benefit to doing 1 leg at a time on this machine is you can use the other leg once you reach the point of failure to help you squeeze the weight up to the top and then slowly control the negative with just that 1 leg. So both legs to bring it up and then 1 leg to control it down so that you exhaust not only the positive portion of the movement, but also the negative. And then after that, going into a couple partial repetitions, just getting as much range of motion as we could muster and finishing the hamstrings off on this exercise. I really like the contraction I'm able to get on this machine as well, doing the 1 leg at a time. So if you have trouble feeling your hamstrings, don't be afraid to go lighter and try this 1 leg at a time. It really allows you to focus on feeling that deep contraction. After this, we moved on to the inner and outer thighs. We did 20 repetitions of each. We supersetted this for 2 sets back and forth. The first set served kind of as a working warm-up, feeling out the weight, and then the second set we brought close to or to failure. So 20 repetitions here, nice and controlled, getting a good squeeze at the top of each and every repetition. Notice I'm sitting up nice and tall. I'm not slumped back against the seat. That's a common mistake I see. You also don't need to get uber fancy and do the Instagram girl where you stand up on the foot pads and lean forward and stick your butt out to the sky. Just sit up nice and tall. Focus on getting a good contraction on the outer thighs, on the glutes. Hold it for a second on the top of every rep so you're not bouncing or using momentum. And then as always, nice and controlled, back to the starting position. So once we got our 20 repetitions there, we moved on to the inner thighs. Same exact thing, only working the opposing muscle group, the adductors. Nice and controlled on every repetition. This is one you want to be careful on. You don't want to explode too much into the top position, and certainly you want to control the negative portion. If not, you can risk a groin pull or an adductor strain, and you don't want that, as that will limit your leg days for the next couple of weeks while that heals up. If you haven't used this machine in a while, I highly recommend you start off going fairly light, as you will be extremely sore for a few days if you start off going too heavy and to failure without having properly built yourself up into this exercise. Otherwise, this was exactly the same as the abductor machine. We focused on 20 repetitions here, nice and controlled, taking it right around failure. We didn't quite need to hit failure while still beating both the repetitions and the weight we did the previous workout. So that's my goal. My goal is always to progressively overload and increase. If that means going to failure to do so, so be it. If that means going just shy of failure to do so, so be it. There's no point for me in trying to overdo it as long as I'm progressively overloading. Then we moved on to dumbbell straight-legged deadlifts. We did 3 sets here, 2 heavy sets with 100, and then we did 1 back off set with a little bit of lighter weight, aiming for 15 to 20 repetitions, so higher repetitions here. You'll notice my range of motion. I'm going into a deep stretch on the hamstrings on every rep, and then just going about 3/4 of the way up. And this is so I keep constant tension on the hamstrings rather than allowing the back to come too much into play. You'll also notice that I'm pushing my butt back at the bottom to accentuate the stretch in the hamstrings, and then pulling it forward at the top, keeping my weight mostly in my heels to further feel the hamstrings. Now that we've covered the hamstring workout, let's jump into your guys' questions. So this is a really deep question that could dive into hours long of answering, but I'm answering these questions honestly and just off the cuff. I'm not scripting them out. I'm not thinking about them too far in advance. So I will give an answer on one piece of advice I would give my younger self regarding bodybuilding and training, and one piece of advice I would give myself regarding business, life, all those aspects outside of bodybuilding. So I first off have to say, as a disclaimer, I'm very thankful for where I'm at in my life. I'm very blessed with all of that. Everything works out in God's timing, and everything that I have done and what's got me to this point has made me who I am. So if I took this advice when I was younger, how do I know everything would have worked out? I might give myself great business advice back then, but that might have caused me to miss out on meeting my wife. So who knows? But these would be the advice that I would give myself if I could keep control of all the good things that are still into play. So regarding bodybuilding, I would say don't rush the process to compete. So I had a very strong mindset for bodybuilding when I first started out. I was willing to work out as much as hard as I needed. I was willing to get into the food to the point where I would eat to where I was throwing up because I had a fast metabolism. And then, of course, I'd get frustrated and have to make a meal again and then eat that because I had thrown up that meal. So I had the mindset, I had what it took, but I was so enthralled with the idea of competing that I feel like I competed a little bit earlier than I needed to or should have. So if I was going back and giving myself advice, I don't think it worked out badly for me, but I would suggest that I spent a good couple more years at least just focusing on putting on quality size, solidifying that size before even thinking about dieting down to the super low body fat percentages and competing. So a lot of people want to get to the stage, especially right now, it's kind of a trendy thing on TikTok. You see a lot of guys competing really young, really light, and props to them. If they want to do that, go for it. However, if your goals are to become elite at this sport, there's really no point in rushing to the stage until you know you're competitive to place highly at, if not a local show, even a national show. There's really no point. You're just wasting time that you could be growing and putting on size if you rush that process to get to the stage. So I would tell myself, if I was coaching my younger self, not to rush to the stage, to focus on a couple more years before competing of just putting on muscle mass and just solidifying that muscle mass as well, so that when I dieted down for my first competition, and that's a whole nother story, the advice I'd give myself the first competition if I was coaching myself, I'd be able to get in so much better condition and do so much better in general with that. So if you are a young bodybuilder and your goal is to compete, do it for social media, get the pictures, challenge yourself, go for it. However, if your goal is to go far in this, don't rush yourself to the stage. Put on quality size first. Look at what it looks like when you get to the winning of a local show, or even placing competitively in a national show, and wait until you can see yourself matching up against those people before competing. So that would be the advice I would give myself from a bodybuilding perspective. Now, from a business perspective, I would give myself the advice to start building into my own business, something that I could run, something that I would have control over growing and with an unlimited ceiling earlier. Now, again, everything is working out in God's timing, so that's perfectly fine. However, there's plenty of time, and I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, working for other businesses, for YMCAs as a personal trainer. I loved the people there, loved the time there, but I spent years there that I could have been focusing on building up my online business that I'm running currently. I could have gotten started with that earlier and had 2-3 years more advanced time to really focus on building that and get to that point, and then other businesses that I'm working on right now as well. So that's the one thing as an employee. Again, I was very happy with the people there. I loved the environment. However, the ceiling is set when you're an employee. When you are a business owner or you're running your own business, creativity is your ceiling. The limit to your creativity is your limit. So if you keep thinking of creative ideas on how to grow, how to expand, then the sky's the limit and you can keep going. And I love having that destiny and that ability in my own hands. I love training people who come to me with that business, and I love working on other business opportunities that I'm working on as well, to set my family up for success in the future and not have to worry about a company downsizing and being let go or anything like that. So that would be the business aspect, is at least mentally researching and getting into that side of things at a younger age. So I would have had a little bit of a faster head start towards that. My favorite bicep exercise, it's hard to pick just one. I think if I had to pick one, my all-time favorite would be a single arm cable curl. I'm really able to isolate and get a great contraction on the bicep. My arm is a little bit longer, so it doesn't work very well leverage-wise. Free weights, I can have a hard time getting a contraction, whereas cables and machines allows me to keep tension much better on the biceps. So single arm cable curl, I really like. Machine preacher curl, I really like that exercise as well. I do like dumbbell curls and hammer curls, but definitely machines and cables are my go-to, and the single arm cable and machine preacher would be my personal top two. Absolutely. I touched on this on an earlier video, and right now we are going into a grow season with the goal to making a pro card push in the summer of 2024. So we are about 1 year away of stepping on a national stage with the goal of being able to attain that pro card. So putting everything into this grow season, setting myself up to the absolute best. So we are going to be transforming, adding a ton of muscle here over the next few months, and then going into a prep for that national level show in 2024, and finally getting that IFBB pro card. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, leave your comments and questions down below, and I will get to them as soon as possible. And thank you so much for following along on this journey with me. I am so excited to help motivate and inspire you and bring you along on this road to the pro card. So until next video, have a great rest of your day.